to tonight's October 27th, 2020 Common Council meeting. Clerk will call the roll, please.
Nelson.
Here.
Hildebrand. Matsdorf.
Here.
Wilson.
Here.
Odeker. Hanson.
Present.
Shulsky.
Present.
Gilson. Here.
Let the record show we have a quorum. Next is the pledge. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion.
So move, Alder Hanson.
Second, Wilson.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll, please, on the consent agenda.
Hanson.
Yes.
Matsdorf.
Yes.
Shulsky.
Yes.
Wilson.
Yes.
Gilson.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Odeker.
Yes.
Hildebrand.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. I know. Next on the agenda is the audience portion where we ask people to sign in and be recognized by the chair, where you do the talking and we do the listening. And tonight, nobody signed in. We do invite you in. I don't know if I want to say that too loudly because next Tuesday, or in 2 weeks, we have the budget, the public hearing for the budget, and it's balanced, so I don't know if I want you to show up and unbalance it. No, I'm only kidding, but we do want your comments, and we invite you to make comments to the council. Moving on, item 5, no items were removed from the consent agenda. Item 5, therefore, isn't needed. Item 6, new business. Authorizing the interim city administrator to approve a pre-annexation agreement with the owners of 1024 Valley Road to allow for water and sewer system connections prior to annexation. I'll call on our interim administrator, Kathy Austin, for a brief summary, please.
Sure. The property owner at 1024 Valley Road has requested to connect to our utilities for sewer and water. They're currently in the town, so in order to do that, they do need to annex into the city. That process is about a 2-month, 3-month process, and you know they're looking to connect sooner than that, right? They're looking to connect last week. So in discussions with them, similar to what we allowed on Highland Avenue, we allowed 3 properties just last year to do the same thing. I know that it is an unsigned copy in your packet, but he has signed the copy, and Crystal has that copy. So there is requirements for them to continue with the annexation and complete annexation by June 1st of 2020. And in the event that they do not annex in, we will turn off their water so that they don't. So there is enforcement in there for them to continue with the annexation.
Thank you, Interim Director Austin. Chair will entertain a motion so we can discuss.
I'll move that we authorize the interim city administrator to approve the pre-annexation agreement with the owners of 1024 Valley Road.
Second, Wilson.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? I think it's important to point out that this agreement mirrors, as Director Austin said, the Highland Avenue agreement from last year, which I think has been very strong in its process. process, and we did that intentionally. And certainly, we have sympathy for the homeowners that are having problems, and this is expensive enough the way it is, but to think that as high as this is, it's still better than doing what they're doing. So I think it's a good effort on our part, and there's checks and balances in it. Alder Hanson, you have a question?
How many properties are on that Valley Road that are not annexed? Do you have an idea? Or is that going to be the only one?
No, I think there's 2 left, maybe 2 or 3 left.
Okay. Thank you.
So there's still some that could come
I
eventually,
think,
but
I think 2, but,
yeah, are they big?
no, I don't think so.
No. So I guess if they have water problems, they'll knock on our door too, but everybody has their own water line, so I guess it doesn't matter. Any other comments? Clerk will call the roll on authorizing the annexation agreement as stated.
Hildebrand,
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Maxdor,
Yes.
Odeker,
Yes.
Gilson,
Yes.
Shilsky,
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. Moving on to item B, approve the memorandum of development agreement termination, Hub City Investors LLC. Is Crystal on? I think maybe I'll ask interim director Austin and myself to kick that back and forth a little bit. We do have some information that came from Attorney Feber's office today, and why don't you give us a brief summary, Kathy?
Sure. Attorney Feber did provide a memo on your tables tonight. And so what's happening is Hub City Investors owns the property of what we know as Prevea. So it's at the end, at the cul-de-sac of Walton Drive. And then also, there was a development agreement at the time that it was constructed as part of her memo that was signed in 2010. And there's a couple key points that Crystal would like to point out. Is so the owner is in the process of selling the property, and discovered that the development agreement retained on the record against the property. So they're asking for a release from the development agreement, right, for the sale of that property. So she's calling out a couple things. The development agreement required the developer to construct the street extension of Walton Drive, as well as the required utilities to the property. However, there is an exception to the developer constructs a medical facility on the property with the assessed value of not less than $4 million. In which case, then the city would construct the street. So if their property was valued at $4 million or more, then the city would construct and pay for the street. So based on the city staff review of the property, it appears that a medical facility was constructed, but the assessed value for the structure is $3.1 million. The development agreement provides that if the city commenced street and utility construction and the medical facility failed to meet the assessed value requirement, the city may proceed with special assessments against lots 1, 2, and 3, as shown on the CSN. Our records show that there were not special assessments imposed on this property. And so that is also why they're asking for, the termination of the development agreement. So I don't know what happened in 2010, but based on the records we can find is that the city and utility did construct the end of Walton Drive for those one property is now Hiawatha Bank, the Prevea, and then I still believe there's 1 or 2 vacant on that stretch. Prevea is only assessed at 3.1 back in 2011, so they did not meet that $4 million threshold. But I don't think to go back and I don't know why it wasn't assessed back then. The mayor has a couple, comments, I believe, on that, on potentially why we didn't assess that. I think it would, and Attorney Heber agrees that I think 10 years later, it would be hard to go back and assess properties.
Thank you, Director. For some of the old timers in the room on the council, if you look back to the dating of this, that was just prior to Brian coming on board. And as such, I'm sure he didn't stay up all night and look at every single document agreement that we had. And that was contemplated at that time. They did not receive any incentive from the city for the medical facility as such. No incentive or TIP benefit, like for instance, Aurora did, if you remember that was I think it was a $30 million project or something. But in any event, there weren't any loans or benefits for that. Do we know what the current assessment is on the property? In other words, in 2011, if it was 3.1, I think it would be logical to assume it's higher than 3.1 today, not lower than 3.1 on today's
Crystal
market value. Okay, Crystal's on. So that's good because she can maybe add any technical. Crystal, this is the mayor. We're talking about the developers agreement termination right now. We're just getting through some of the background on it, and Kathy explained the conversation that we had earlier today, that the time to do that may well have passed at this point in time. Not that we couldn't do it, but I guess I would ask you to make your comment relative to if we did pursue the cost, we'd have to go back and establish those costs to begin with, and records probably would be someplace in the utility office to do that. But what would be your assessment of attempting to do this, and the time, 10 years has passed that we didn't do it, and what our chances would be? So why don't you kind of chime in on
Sure.
that aspect, please?
Sure, I can give you, my assessment of the situation. And I think it would be highly unusual 10 years after constructing improvements like the streets and the utilities to then go back to a developer and pursue the special assessment. At this point, that property owner is coming to the city because the development agreement remains on the title and they're looking to sell the property. And so that's really what initiated this discussion, was their desire to sell the property. And actually, they were supposed to close today on that sale. So certainly, to pursue special assessments at this point in time would disrupt whatever sale plans they have in place, because that development agreement is recorded against the title. So I think that's something for the council to be aware of and to consider. And if we attempted to go back, I think at this point in time it may be very difficult to determine what the appropriate special assessment is. constructed in 2010, so I can only assume that the streets and the utilities went into Walton Drive there in 2010 as well. So, we're getting pretty far out to try to recreate that. It would be a rather lengthy process for us to go through to determine what the special assessments are and then to put those assessments on the property. And you may have noticed in the memo that when we're talking about the special assessments, there's really 3 different parcels in the city that would be impacted by that under the development agreement. And you should have received that map from me, which shows those 3 parcels. So right now we have Provea looking to be selling, the owner of that one property. The special assessments would impact those 3 properties that are located at the end of the cul-de-sac. So I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have there. But like I said, I think it would be highly unusual 10 years later to be revisiting this special assessment issue, but certainly it's a decision for the council to make.
Thank you, Attorney Fever. FYI for the council, and then we'll entertain a motion. We're not privy to what sale they're doing to whom and what's going on there, because that's not our property. We don't have it in the Plymouth Industrial Development Corp or anything like that. So that's their property, and we're not privy to that. So if something goes there, I guess that's the good news. But it showed up in, obviously, the title search.
There's
So
nothing on lot 1, 2, or 3 at this time?
Lot 3 is Hiawatha.
right. Lot 3 is Hiawatha.
Lot 2
Lot
is
2 is Provea, and they're selling Lot 1.
Okay.
So yes, 3 is sold too, but that didn't show up in that search, but it did show up in this search. So with that, the chair will entertain a motion so we can discuss.
I make a motion, we go with Crystal's recommendation to, not pursue, I guess?
To agree to the termination agreement.
Yes, okay, to
Yeah.
agree to the termination.
I'll second that. Wilson?
We have a first and a second discussion.
I guess I'm reluctant to vote in favor of this. Obviously the original owner knew that they were in this agreement and didn't stand by it. What's the sense of having agreements if people were able to just walk away from it 10 years later? On the other hand, I think it's important to allow the sale of that lot and to develop something of value there too. So really torn on how to vote on this. It just really irks me that people can walk away and not have that special assessment. But I understand how it fell through the cracks too. That was the transition time. Brian probably did not know the
No,
details.
I'm sure he did it, yeah.
That's my 2 cents worth.
I agree. Is there any potential cost to the taxpayer? Is there any potential cost to the taxpayer by terminating this agreement? Or does it fall on the property buyer when they buy it?
Well, whatever we expensed in 10 and 11 through the utility to construct the sewer and water lateral, and then I would assume the city for the street has already been expensed and written off and gone bye-bye, for lack of a better word, and that's 10 years ago.
Okay.
Does it cause us anything today? No. That's behind us.
Not collecting.
I agree with Alder Nelson, but I think we have to move on.
Yeah. Any other comments? Alder Hanson.
Who is Hub City Investors?
I don't rightly know who the individuals are as part of that investment group. I don't know.
That's not Prevea, it's,
Crystal, do you know, I mean, are they reselling the Prevea Clinic, or is it the vacant lot next door?
I never was connected.
Crystal?
Crystal?
Sorry, I'm here. I don't know for sure which lot it is. It appeared to me that it was that Prevea lot, but it could be any of the lots impacted by the development agreement. And so we can certainly try to find that out. My only contact has been with the attorney who sent us that, asking us to sign it, and we went back and forth and asked for some revisions and cleaned up some inaccuracies in it, but there hasn't been a lot of information about which lot or what the intended development is or anything like that.
So we don't even know which lot it is.
Well, the agreement is all three, 1, 2, and 3. The agreement is those 3 surveyed lots.
I thought we were just talking about lot one.
So I think if you looked at going after special assessments, you'd be looking at special assessments for all 3 of those lots.
Correct.
You're not gonna just
The
Number
target.
2 and number 3 didn't
Yeah.
have anything come up with it.
It hasn't come up before, no.
But number 1 did.
We don't know which lot they're selling.
In other words,
I think we should find out what's going on in which lot. And
But if it's the Prevea building, it's gotta be assessed at 4 million, correct?
Correct, because it's the medical facility,
Because
correct?
like, according to the Sheboygan County Tax Assessor, the total value of that lot right now with land and improvements is about 3.5.
Yeah, so again, I think if you would be looking at doing special assessments, you'd be looking at doing a special assessments on all 3 of those lots. Not,
And that is correct. It would be all 3 of the lots, and that's here in the terms of the development agreement. It provides discretion for the city to do the special assessment, but if there are special assessments, it would be on all 3 lots.
and one would assume that that would be prorated in some fashion because Hiawatha obviously was a cornfield as well, and now their assessment is probably $1 million or $2 million as well. So if the current assessment on lot 2, Prevea, Jerry just looked that up, is 3.5, and whatever lot 3 is, which is Hiawatha, and he's doing his magic on his phone right now. I have no idea what lot 1 is assessed for being a vacant.
lot 3 is not gonna show up on the county because they took occupancy this year.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, so they're not gonna, it's not gonna show on their last year's tax roll.
Oh, that's confusing.
And typically, assessments for utility and roadway are based on frontage. So that's how you would, you look at the overall cost of the project, and then based on frontage, you would divide it out.
And that frontage would be mostly on lot 3. Lot 2 has a small top of the circle, lot 1 has a side of the circle, but lot 3 has certainly the biggest French curve there.
According to this, Jim Hinkle owns, lot 1.
Would it be inappropriate for us to ask for some kind of compensation to agree to this release or modification of the release?
Crystal, that's for you.
Yep. Certainly we can explore additional options the council wants us to. will be initiating them.
And I assume if they were to close today, they're very, very anxious to get this past them so they can close.
I suspect you're right.
So what would your recommendation be?
Did you hear that, Crystal? Charlie asked, what would your recommendation be?
I suspect that when this was going on, we were right at the end of the recession. I think things were just starting to pick up again back in 2010. And it may have been that someone made a conscious decision at that time to not pursue it. What I wish would have happened is that the council would have reviewed it and we would have made a decision in 2010 that we were either going to pursue special assessment or not pursue special assessment. I don't know what the dollar amount is. At this point, we would have to do some digging and try to recreate what we think those costs were. And I think the reality of it is that as we go through the process, I would expect these three property owners to contest our special assessment because we are having to go through and recreate things. And I don't know that we can definitively ascertain what our costs were related to these parcels. I don't know if we have detailed enough records about the work that the city did that benefited these parcels. Kathy, do you have any information on that?
No, not at this time.
Do you have a sense as to whether you think that information is something that we can identify if we search through city records?
The only thing that we could potentially identify would be the contractor cost, but I'd also have to figure out who the contractor was. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'd be able to find out that information. Probably also need to get Core involved, and looking through probably some of their records, because they did do the design for the roadway and the utilities.
I think this should be tabled and give Crystal an opportunity to find a one-time buyout, closure to it before we okay the release.
Are you suggesting, Alder Hildebrand, that we ask Crystal to see if she couldn't get some compensation voluntarily?
Compensation, the closure on it, and then vote through.
And give her the authority to move ahead and approve it based on her discussions, which could produce something and could not produce something.
Anything, but I don't think.
Unless, I think to start that discussion, and I think it would be a discussion with the three property owners, so it has the potential to be more complicated if we're going to be releasing all three properties from those special assessment obligations. I think it will take some time, and before we even started those discussions, I think we would need to identify at the city level what those special assessments would be for the properties, because otherwise we don't have a starting point, to really have that discussion. And this will certainly hold up whatever potential sale is planned for that parcel out there.
I just don't think it's fair to one company paid probably everything, like the Walmarts or something, and this is getting away with nothing. I think it's fair across the board.
Well, that was under the utility director at the time, which was John McKinnon. And so that's long gone too. Alder Hanson.
What do the Purveyor and Hiawatha, do they pay a tax, property tax on that, or are they exempt, or how does that those two properties? I mean, they're developed and everything now.
They pay property
So the
tax.
hospital, where their clinic does?
Yeah, it's a clinic, so it pays property tax.
And so the other parcel has not necessarily paid for development because they're developed.
Well, their assessment would be
Land.
cornfield. Yeah, agricultural type of thing. It certainly isn't gonna be millions of dollars because it's not developed, yeah. But the others would have assessments and pay property taxes since 2011 for Purveya, and in Hiawatha is 2 years, not quite 2 years, year and a half. This is
This
This is their first full year, yeah. So, but yeah, those two are taxable entities.
To me, it's a tough decision not to do something about it, but then balance what is it gonna cost for attorneys and that aspect of it.
Well, and there is, I think, some value to what Director Austin said. And I spent the afternoon looking through some of my old records, trying to dig something up on, because I keep all my council stuff, and I put my red notes on them all the time. I couldn't find 2011, so I can't shed any light on that. But I know we did things back then as the recession comment was correct in that we were a little more lax in our aggressiveness because we were still coming out of 2008, 2009, and 2010. And, you know, 3.5 today isn't 4, that's true. But back then it was 3.1, so I guess, you know, that could have been a deal or a prorated thing too. We don't know. I think, Charlie, you and I are the only ones here back that far, and I just don't know.
I think they exchanged attorneys too, didn't we, at that time?
That would have been Ron Dam, that was before Crystal. So, I guess I'd like to see it move ahead because it is over the hill, but certainly we could ask the attorney to address it in some fashion and maybe a good corporate partner participation in some way. But I don't see how you can go after something that's 10 years old, especially if it is lot one and they're making a sale and that sets that back. That's a potential problem that isn't going to get maybe addressed timely, because they were supposed to close it today and this came up, and thank God for title companies, I guess. Because we didn't catch it because we're not privy to it per se. So we have a first and a second to approve it and move on. And here's Crystal.
Crystal Beaver.
Very timely.
Magician?
Right? Sorry, everyone.
So we're just getting to the point of trying to decide if we want to move on, or maybe the question now that you're here is, how long a fight could this be?
I think it will be a challenge for us to recreate and come to an accurate assessment of the expenses. I think it will be a challenge to go back to that 2010 construction. So, you know, my sense is that this is something that we may just
We didn't
cut the
do it.
losses from 10 years ago and move forward and hope for some development on that property so that we have some new tax base coming into the city. I think certainly if that is the plan for this vacant lot, that going through the special assessment process is really going to disrupt that development.
I guess I'd kind of like to know what order of magnitude we're talking about here. If it's $5,000, that's one thing. If it's $100,000, that's totally different, right? And I don't know.
Is there any number to come up with a buyout, like $20,000 buyout?
Yeah.
That'd be done.
I think Kathy's probably in a better position to give some estimate as to what 2010
Just something to
loss might be for that cul-de-sac.
say, yeah, we're done with it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're adding, the sanitary, the water, and it's, roughly 225 feet with the cul-de-sac, I mean, you could be 250, 300,000 potentially, right? For all the work. But that would be split between city and utility. But again, I honestly, without going back in the records, I can't tell you.
Well, I wonder why this didn't show up when Hiawatha did this. I mean, title companies should have been able to find this at that time too. So, I feel bad for Hiawatha. Here they come in and they invest in building this building and everything, and now they get a special assessment for $60,000. I mean, that to me isn't fair.
If I may, Mayor, and I agree, and that's where I think that if we do it on the special assessment path, that it's likely to be very contentious, and that I don't expect it would be a process where we would have a lot of agreement between all the different property owners for just these reasons. There's been such a passage of time. Normally, when you construct public improvements like this, you're putting those special assessments on right away so that the people buying the property know what they're getting into. And so I do think there's that element of fairness that comes into this decision 10 years later to come back and now try to recover these costs that were expended 10 years ago.
Well, I certainly don't want to stymie a future business coming in here. I want to be as favorable to them as we possibly can.
And I agree with all that too. It's just that I think there'd be some type of minimum cost, something we could come up with.
It's, yeah,
I agree.
Here you go, thank you.
yeah, so what dartboard do you use?
Yeah, I know.
And therein lies the biggest problem, because now it's, Hiawatha didn't know it, now it's built, and now you say, oh, by the way.
There was no TID 4 in that, was there?
Pardon?
There was no TID 4 monies in any of that?
I don't remember any TID funds being allocated to Purveyor for sure, and I know there wasn't for Hiawatha, because that's only 2 years ago. But I do not remember any proceeds or loans or grants or rebates for Purveyor whatsoever. So I don't believe that they got an incentive to do it per se. I think that they wanted to be here because they wanted to be next to the competition, and they have customers in Plymouth, a lot of customers. Crystal?
And Mayor, in the development agreement, normally if there is some TID incentive that is paid to a developer from TID funds, we would see a reference to those TID laws in the development agreement. We don't have any references in this development agreement, which suggests to me that there is no TID money involved.
No.
All right.
It's kind of a good news, bad news thing. And I guess I would encourage us to move on.
Yeah.
You can't fix 10 years ago per se, other than obviously legally they want it fixed,
I guess we have some wrong with this, with it.
and it, yeah, it is what it is.
Right.
Any other comments before I call the roll? Clerk will call the roll on the agreement as presented.
Gilson,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Odekirk,
Yes.
Hildebrand,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Matsdorf,
Yes.
Shilsky,
Yes.
Wilson.
Yes.
It's a hard one, council members, and we all understand that, and none of us really knew about it, to tell you the truth. So, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the 2021 budget update, and tonight we have our interim director on the hot seat. So, with that, it's showtime.
I'll tell you, I never thought I'd be giving this presentation. If I would have known Brian was leaving, maybe I would have paid more attention last year. So to kind of follow suit, tonight you did receive the draft 2021 budget docs. And then the presentation definitely is a high view and definitely does not include every bit and piece that's in those documents. So I advise you to really take your time and go through the budget on your own and ask me any questions. The public hearing is scheduled for November 10th. All right, so part of the presentation will outline the budget assumptions. We'll go through the revenues and expenditures for the city's general fund, as well as the Plymouth utilities, and then some capital improvement highlights. As stated before, typically this presentation does include assessment ratios and kind of where we are from the Department of Revenue. To date, the Department of Revenue has not released that information for the city of Plymouth. They did do a lot of releases last Friday. However, the city of Plymouth information was not included in their latest release. So that information will be forthcoming to council members once I receive that information. So some of the budget assumptions, we are increasing the tax levy by $100,000. That is historically what we've done. We did not do it in 2020, but we did do it in the years prior. We do not have any planned rate adjustments for the electric, sewer, or water utility. There's no planned new debt for the general fund or the Plymouth utilities. Garbage and recycling fees will continue to increase. That was set and started, I think in 2016, and the goal is so that it's completely user paid for. So currently the general fund still provides funds to the garbage collection, as we only provide garbage collection for 4 units or less. So their fees will continue to increase. And then it does include generally a 3% payroll increase. And then also employee contributions to their high deductible plan is scheduled to increase from 6% to 8%. It continues to provide funding for the library, and including new furniture for their library. And then we are expecting at least a $20,000 increase in revenue from Sheboygan County Library System. It does include a comprehensive plan update in 2021. Our last plan update was in 2011. It continues to convert park playground areas from sand to wood chips. It includes ADA restroom modifications at the youth center, and then it includes the downtown Cheese Capital Arch project. The main roadway and utility project for 2021 is Smith Street, from Elizabeth Street to Orchard Lane, and then also Elizabeth Street from Caroline to Smith Street. And that is a lead service area. So we would be doing the lead lines, and sanitary sewer, as well as the roadway pavement. And it uses approximately $250,000 of the general budget from 2020 to assist with the 2020 roadway projects. And that was approved for the 2020 budget.
Question I have for you, as far as the user fee for the garbage, that'll never be not increased because there are probably additional fees each year, but when will it be a user fee without the increase each year? I can say it that way.
I believe it increases all the way till 2026, when our contract is up for renegotiation with Advanced Disposal.
Okay, and
And then at that time, it might continue to increase based on our new fees with Advanced Disposal.
Yeah, that's a prearranged contract
Yeah.
with Advance. Another one?
one more question. As far as on the roadway, will there be, utility project, will there be any lining of the sewer lines, or don't we know that yet?
It would be mainly sewer lining, correct?
Mainly lining, not
Yeah,
replacing.
correct, yeah. There are some spot repairs, but for the most part, it is lining.
And maybe a clarification on the $250,000 of general budget capital funds from 2020, that's going to be rolled into the 21 usage.
Yes, so that 250,000 was in excess 250,000.
Correct.
That was planned to help pay for the Smith Streets project in 2021. Yes.
Okay, just a point of clarity there. Okay, go ahead.
The total general fund revenue, it increases, and that's mainly due to the $100,000 tax levy increase. There's also changes that we are expecting. The payment in lieu of taxes from Plymouth Utilities will also increase about $60,000. That's due to the substation 2 completion, as well as the shared revenue for the library, as I previously mentioned. The reason why the difference in 2020 and 2021 is not the $160,000, the debt service portion that the utility pays, so the city has the debt, but the utility pays a portion of the debt. With our new conversion of the financial system, used to be a pass-through on the city side, but now the utility will just pay that directly because of our financials are merged into one. So the city won't be receiving that revenue, nor are we expensing it in the expense side. And then also we're expecting a decrease in room tax fees. Our shared revenue decreased about $6,000 for 2021, as well as our personal property tax. We actually will not be receiving any revenue in that line item. They overpaid us in 2019, and so we will not be receiving any revenue for personal property tax in 2021. As mentioned before, the tax levy portion, we are increasing by $100,000. And you can see the trend. So starting in 2016 to 2017, we increased the $100,000. Again in 2018 and 2019. And then we're doing the same in 2021. On the intergovernmental revenues, the graph is a little deceiving because it really is only about a $6,000 difference in revenues compared to 2020. So our revenue is diversified based on the tax levy is 51% of our budgeted revenue, as well as 13% of it comes from the taxes, the non-property taxes, so that's payment in lieu of tax, is the big one from the utility. As far as our city expenditures go, 26% will be spent in the police department, 15% is spent in public works, and then there are it's pretty well spread out evenly and amongst the other categories up there. 14% of it is also used for our capital projects.
Could we back up just
Sure.
a second to the budget revenue? What about the county sales tax? Is that in here somewhere?
So that's not part of the intergovernment revenues. That shows up on, actually, it reduces the general fund capital transfers that the general fund does into the capital improvements plan. So in 2020, I believe we received about 110,000 from the county sales tax. And in 2021, they're projecting 100,000, 101,000 maybe, something like that. So about $10,000 less.
Does that twilight out, increases are on for 10 years, is it, or?
For the sales tax?
Yes.
I cannot answer that question.
Well, the sales tax is permanent, and it's, so there's not a sunset date on that. So we get that 1%, 1/10 of one, or 0.5%. We get a prorated portion on the original agreement of assessment that the county collects, which is 0.5%. So our agreement says that we have to put that sales tax toward road improvement projects that we can combine a year or two and save it for a big project, but we have to continue to track it because they wanted to track it for road improvement, and it has to be an increase in our road improvement. We can't divert other money to something else.
And that's negotiated down the road. We have a somewhat agreement passed where they said they're gonna give us for how many years or not?
I'm sorry.
The county's gonna give us that money for how many years, or is
Forever.
Is that, oh, I thought it was
That's state law, and it's now permanent in our sales tax.
But the
That's
$100,000, they don't always have to give us that, do they? Or is that
Our volume, our dollars are dependent on the sales in the county, the taxable sales. We're down about
Right.
10,000 because, quite honestly, we've had sales tax less transactions because of COVID.
But that amount that the county gives us for roads, is that guaranteed as long as the sales tax is on, is my question.
As long as the sales tax takes place, then we get it from the county, correct?
Yeah, that hasn't been the case.
Because,
And Mayor, if I may just jump in on that?
yes,
To the best of my knowledge, Sheboygan County is the only county in the state that is sharing the sales tax revenue with the other municipalities. And the mayor's correct that it has to be used for transportation projects. So it is a direct expense that way, or potentially reducing the levy for taxpayers. Periodically, there are court challenges to the sales tax and the way that municipalities are using it. So it's possible that at some point there may be a change to state law or a court decision that affects how we in Sheboygan County can use those sales tax funds. But as far as I know, there's no discussion on the county level to alter the arrangement between the county and the city. So for the foreseeable future, it's anticipated there would still be that cooperation between the county and the other municipalities to offset some of the city's transportation costs.
and that was, Crystal's right, we are the only county that shares that with other municipalities in the entire state. And that was part of the agreement to have all of the communities sign on, was that we end up getting a pro rata portion of that. So that was part of the negotiation process when that was, because if you remember right, it was offered twice before and it failed.
County's
this
good
time.
partners to us.
Pardon?
The county's good partners to us.
So we came out on the top end of that one.
And this slide is the transfer for the capital projects, just to showing the time in history. We've been right around $1 million being transferred into the capital improvement program, at least since 2014. Some highlights in the capital improvement plan for the city. So 58% of the capital dollars are spent in the streets and parking lot and sidewalks. A lot of it is the Smith Street project. For that admin and IT, we were looking at the server for the city, as well as the comprehensive plan update as previously mentioned. In the fire department, their main purchases are new voice amps and replacement of some of their aging equipment. The police department highlights are civil defense equipment and a replacement of a squad car. In DPW, the bulk of it is a replacement of a plow truck. And in our parks and recreation areas, we, as I mentioned, the youth center upgrades, as well as tree plantings to continue the reforestation from the EAD. The general fund debt services, as I mentioned, the utility will be paying for their portion directly now, so it won't be a pass-through through the city. So the dollar amounts are different than previously provided in prior years. So the city will be, if no new debt, will be debt-free in 2028. As well as the utility, they'll be debt-free in 2032. So their last payment will be in 2031, bearing no additional debt.
And that goes back to our policy that we instituted for only borrowing for large projects, and we pay cash for everything else. So that's a continuation of that policy that the council adapted, I believe, 5 or 6 years ago.
So on the electric side, on the revenues, 58% comes from the industrial and 10% from commercial and 30% from the residentials. Our operating budget, we spend 81% of the revenue we spend on purchasing our power. So our operating revenues for electric are around $24 million, and our expected expenses on the utility side for electrical, is $23.5 million. On the water side, mainly 44% is our residential revenues. And our revenues on the water side total about $2.2 million. And on the expenditure side, we're estimating $1.8 million of expenses. Most of it being used for, depreciation of our assets and taxes. On the sanitary sewer side, it mimics our water utility. So we have about $2.3 million in estimated revenues on the sanitary, and then $1.9 million on the operating expenses for 2021. Some of the capital improvement plans on the utility side. So the electrical utility sees about half of the capital plan, and that's mainly, they use those dollars, a little over $1 million on upgrades to the transmission line. So, they try to do, in the city, they're trying to put the lines underground. That's making it more reliable during windstorms and our storms that we have, as well as making sure that the rural area is being upgraded as well. For vehicles, most of that expense is a new digger truck. That was a split year. Part of it was funded in 2020, and we paid those expenses, and then the body of the truck is paid for in 2021, so that's already kind of been allocated. At the wastewater treatment plant, there's $164,000 being spent there on maintenance upgrades to the facility. And then sewer and water sees about 25% of the overall capital improvement plan, and that's mainly to follow a roadway on Smith Street. We do have one additional, about $50,000 project, and that's to upgrade our chemical buildings at 4 of our wells, and that's per a DNR mandate that we have to do that in 2021. Again, it was just a quick overview of the documentations that you were provided today. And like I said, once I get the assessment information from the state, I'll provide the council that in a memo format so that you have that before the public hearing on November 10th.
With that, any questions from the council on the brief presentation? It was published in the review as required, and it is balanced. So we will have the public hearing in 2 weeks, once again in this room. So if there's any questions, please address that and contact Interim Director Austin. But I certainly want to thank her for taking this burden on as Interim Director. And as we assumed back in May, she was going to have to come through with all of the work using her staff and the other management team that we have. And I certainly appreciate the work that you did. Sometimes it isn't easy when you get thrown in the soup like that, but
I did have good help from my department.
we have good people everywhere. That's exactly right. So, Alder Hanson, you had a comment?
I just wanted to, you made the comments that I wanted to make, and I just want to compliment our, interim city administrator and the staff and the department leaders and things like this that put a nice touch in a difficult time.
Good. Thank you very much. With that, the chair will entertain